Well, hello there and welcome back to the Business Management Training Series. I'm LeGrand and we're in lesson 4 now, and this lesson is going to be all about cash flow mistakes. This is actually one of my favorite lessons because when I get people in my business management boot camp and we start working with them about how they run their business and we have this panel discussion and the like, I get to screen everybody and I see that pretty much everybody's making the same mistakes all across the land, and it's not really your fault. Where do you learn this stuff anyway? Where do they teach you how to run a business? Actually, there's only one place, and that's in the School of Hard Knocks, where sometimes you have to fail a few times before you figure out how to do it right. You can go to business schools, but guess who teaches those? That's people who've never written a paycheck. So there's school learning, and then there's real life learning. And in real life, you better manage your cash flow, or the gremlins are going to come get you, and your business is not going to be around long. So I'm going to talk about some of the mistakes that I see people making, and we'll put them up there on the screen as I discuss them. Number one, if there's no marketing in your business, then there's no customers, and if there's no customers, there's no revenue, and if there's no revenue, there's no cash flow, except negative. It's all outgo and no income. So one of the biggest cash flow mistakes that I see businesses making, and I mean all kinds of businesses actually, is they don't spend enough time doing the first step of the 5, which is locating prospects. Guys, if you don't locate prospects, you don't have any business. So fortunately for us, we don't have to spend hardly any money to get prospects, because we're either going to have VAs call FSBOs, or we're going to get them free through realtors if they're bank-owned properties. So our cost of marketing is almost nil. Now, there's a few things that we can do. We can put out signs and we can put out ads and flyers and all of that, but still it's a very, very, very small cost. But if you do nothing in your business to get sellers to call you, then your business will be worth nothing. So mistake number 1 is we got to make sure that we implement and keep implementing marketing in our business. All businesses, no matter what kind of a business it is. Cash flow mistake number 2 is people focus on cost control, not creating revenue. Look, it's your job as the leader to stay focused on bringing in the money. And nobody cares more about that than you do, because you're the only one with the responsibility to make it happen. If you've got VAs working for you, if you've got things being outsourced, or if you've got employees, they're all looking for a paycheck. They're not concerned about where it's coming from. They just expect to get it when they're supposed to get it. You're the one that's got to be concerned about where it's coming from. And if your time is all spent focused on cost control, focused on saving the pennies instead of focused on getting the dollars, next thing you know, the dollars are not going to be larger than the pennies. In fact, my brother David once said something that stuck with me. He says, if your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. And that's pretty right on. So you've got to stay focused on the big picture, and let your staff, let your people, let your spouse, let your VA, let somebody else worry about all the little small stuff. Now, you've got to keep your eye on them, but you can't let them control your thinking. By the way, folks, it don't make any difference what gas price is. There's nothing you're going to do about it except keep paying it and sticking it in your car. It don't make any difference what Pat Live costs. It matters not what yellow letters cost. It don't make any difference what your VA gets. All of that is the small stuff that leads you to the big stuff. You focus on getting those $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 checks in and day out, let somebody else take care of the little stuff. And number 3, the third biggest mistake in cash flow management is spending money that's not yours. Boy, this is normal. You see, most people operate their businesses from their checkbook. They assume that if there's money in their account, they're making money. Not true. Or they assume that if their account is empty, they're not making money. Also not true. You cannot operate your business just by looking through your checkbook. You have to know what your liabilities are. And one of the things that I spend time in my business management boot camp with the people is to try to figure out what their break-even point is at the beginning of a month, so they know how much money they got to bring in before they start making money that month. The best time for you to know what your costs are going to be is before the month starts, not when it's over, and then you figure out whether you got enough or not. So your goal is going to be to decide what your break-even is going to be. Now, up in front of you on the screen right about now, you will see a sheet that I created to let you determine what your monthly break-even is. And if you will take time, and if you're actually working your business right now, or in fact this actually applies to any business, you can take this sheet and you can fill in what your costs are. Now I've designed this one because in class I have a panel, so there's different columns on the one that I got here, but so it's one column per person. In your case, you'll only use the one column. However, you could use each column for a month, for example, and do a spreadsheet that takes you from month to month. And if you go down the list, you'll see that we take all of our expenses and we put them up there the best we can figure them. And we go down the sheet and we then add our wages in. And we go down to our advertising cost and then other items that's in our expense. And this was designed for buying and selling houses. And if you look down at the bottom, the bottom line that you're trying to figure out is your break even. And in my sheet, that would be on line number 33. So if I know what my break even is, if my break even is say $5,000 a month, actually it's going to be more than that because the minimum that I'm going to let you pay yourself is $5,000 a month. So let's say my break even is $7,500 a month. Then I know that I got to do at least one little deal a month to cover all of my nut, including my own personal salary, and the rest after that is absolutely net profit. Guys, all businesses need to have that number. All businesses need to know what their break even or their nut is, regardless of what kind of business it is. So if you know what that is, then you won't be spending money that isn't yours. You see, if you write a check out of your account to say cover the repairs on a house, and that is your business account, all you're doing is taking money from a liability that hasn't arrived yet and spending the money on a house that you shouldn't be spending it on. So now when the bill arrives, you have a negative cash flow and you don't have any way to pay it. That's what creates stress and anxiety. You can't spend money that isn't yours, and that money's already spent. The bill just hasn't come in yet. So you have to come, let me teach you how to structure your business so you'll start with what your break even is, then you'll know what you can spend the money on and what you can't. And there's an operating account, and then there's an escrow account for taxes and insurance on properties that you're holding. For example, if you're buying bank-owned properties like I do, somebody's got to pay those taxes. There should be money taken out of that rent and set aside to pay those taxes. And then there's repairs on property and down payments. You cannot take away from your operating account and do those things and expect to like your cash flow situation. In other words, you can't rob Peter to pay Paul. And spending money on the wrong things. Holy moly. I see people spending money on stupid advertising, stuff they've never tried before. They'll go commit to a whole year's Yellow Pages ad, spend $500 a month on an ad they haven't even tested, and they're locked in for a year. We don't do stupid things like that. You got to be very, very careful what you spend money on. I see people going out and doing a yellow letter campaign. They'll drop 1,000 letters in the mail and they haven't even dropped the first 100 or 200 in there to test the list yet. We don't do things like that. You can't spend money on the wrong things. You can't go spend $10,000 stocking up your home office just because you decided you're going to get in business one day. You've got to be very, very careful about what you spend those dollars on. And when you get the cash flow coming in, then you can take some of those dollars that you know belong to you and start spending on the things that you can test with. If you don't have the cash flow, you shouldn't be doing much testing. You shouldn't be risking money that doesn't belong to you. And then the last one, and one of my pets, is that most people do not pay themselves first. Folks, there's only one reason to have a business, and that's so it provides for you. And if your business cannot pay you a reasonable salary, it sucks. It needs to be fixed. You come first. You are the biggest expense in your business, not your employees. You come first. Everything else comes second. You should rob your business blind. Your business is only there to pay you. You suck all the money out of it you can, and you do not put it back. That's contrary to what most people do. Most people open a business and they take all the money they make in the business and they spend it back on the business. Well, then what happens to the individual when they need money? And then if the business goes down, the individual goes down because they're both broke. We don't do that. You're going to pay yourself first, and I'm going to train you to do that, and I'm going to pound that into you. Because if you're not paying yourself, you're not going to like your business. I can tell you that for sure. All right. Next, cost control. Let's spend a minute just on cost control. Look, really, what cost do we have to control? Let's think about this. I'm going to pay a VA, and I'm paying about a minute, and I might be paying them a couple $100 a week. And I can tell you, if I am, they're doing a lot of work and they're generating a lot of FSBOs. I'm going to buy a few signs when I actually get these houses closed on. I might have some closing costs from time to time if I'm taking title. I'm going to probably do some advertising, like, maybe business cards and maybe some cheap ads in some papers and maybe some flyers in the daily paper. All very inexpensive stuff. If I have a personal assistant, I'm going to have a personal assistant on the payroll. All of these are very, very minor expenses. So, I got to ask you, why do we have to worry about cost? Why do we have to worry about our operating overhead? Let's spend more time worrying about bringing in some money and keep that operating overhead down, and then it won't consume us. Guys, I had a restaurant in Myrtle Beach a few years ago, and that restaurant cost me $2.5 million of borrowed money to get open, and it took $55,000 a week in gross revenue just to keep the doors open. That's break even, $55,000 a week. Well, in the winter, we could not bring in enough to keep those doors open, and consequently, those doors closed. Now, I want you to compare that with buying and selling houses. A few $100s a month for outgo and thousands of dollars a month for income, with none of that risk, no borrowed capital, no promises you can't keep, and I had 76 employees I had to put out of work. You'll have none. I mean, there's just no comparison here. All right. Let's see. Spending money on the wrong things. I think I've covered that. If it doesn't directly generate revenue, you got to ask yourself, is it the right place to put money? Now look, I have to fight this from time to time. Scott comes to me or somebody comes to me and they want me to spend money on stuff, and first thing I ask myself is that, if I okay that, is that going to directly do anything to get me another check or a bigger check? And if the answer is no, I don't do it. I don't do it. And the people that you work with and that work for you, they're always going to be looking to spend money on things because they're not the marketing brain. They haven't thought it through. It's not their responsibility. You got to ask yourself, if I spend that money, what's my rate of return? Do I get a return? If the answer is no, then you probably should decline the request, even if the request is from you. All right. Big money suckers, I think I've talked about that. Wrong advertising. Absolutely do not spend a bunch of money on advertising. You do not need to, and I promise you it probably will not work. From a guy who spent all the money on the advertising and done everything that you can do. I've blowed a lot of money doing stupid stuff that I shouldn't have done. Unnecessary labor is another place to waste money. I promise you this, there's all kinds of people that you can hire to do all kinds of things, but it's going to be a rare thing indeed to where that person can't always find something to use the time that you allot them to do. Be very careful when you're paying for labor. Make sure you're getting what you're paying for and that you get measurable results, because you can always add more labor, but if it doesn't add more income, you shouldn't be adding the labor. And when I say labor, I'm talking about your PA, your employee, your children, or your virtual assistant. And also another huge money sucker is monthly payments on vacant houses. That is a no-no. We do not want to be making monthly payments on vacant houses. I can tell you from long, hard experience, that one will take you down quickly. There's one time I had 26 vacant houses that I was making payments on. Don't think you want to go to that seminar. So I want you to learn how to structure your business so that you are not obligated to make monthly payments on vacant houses. When you take over debt, the seller makes the next 2 or 3. When you borrow money from a private lender, you either borrow at accruing interest, or you have a provision in there that if the house is not occupied, you do not have to make a payment that month, and the interest will add to the principal and extend the term. Guys, these are all things I'll teach you if you'll come spend some time with me. I've been at this for an awful long time now, and I can tell you for sure the things that you can do wrong, and if you come spend some time with me, you'll see that there's always a good way around it, and there's always a good answer, and maybe save you an awful lot of grief. So anyway, that's it for lesson 4. I'll see you soon on lesson 5.